their financial advisor. This is making sense so far, how building a little team, a little strategy will actually create more reliance upon you in the future. Yes? Excellent. Give me 1 second to transition from outside to inside. Dorina, can I use your camera when I get in there? Do you mind if I jump on your room with you? Awesome. So a little bit about what I just did was conservation board. Hands up if you're on a committee of any kind in your city. Where do you work? All right, we got to work on that. So one, free advertisement, right? You end up on live TV. And two, it's building relationships in your community. Let me turn this off. All right, let me get a chair. I'll be right back.
Yeah, Courtney, did you say you were on conservation or some sort of committee? You raise your hand.
I'm actually on Dream Centers of Colorado Springs, and that's for the homeless single women.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's rewarding. So Courtney is doing, okay, go ahead.
You can come back. I like to be front and center. There's Melanie. There's Jen. How are you, Melissa? Thomas, good to see you. Greg, Howie, Courtney, again, good to see you. And we got Donette and Nathaniel. Excellent. So everybody here's a real estate agent. Hands to the camera if you're licensed. Yes? Excellent. Hands to the camera if you like making money. All right, we're all honest real estate agents. I love that. You all have heard it, maybe even said it. I know I've said it. I just do real estate because I really love helping people. Although that is true, I really love money more, because if it came down to a bag of cash and helping people, I'd grab the bag of cash and I'd help myself to a drink at the bar. And if anybody came around, I'd talk about what made me successful. Fair to say? That'd be a lot more fun. Excellent. So at least we're honest. And if it came down to it, would I be chasing around houses, helping people buy real estate, or would I be doing a charity or something that I care about? If I had just the bag of cash, I'd just be working on something that really is meaningful to me. Anybody agree with spending money on things that mean something to you? Excellent. So working with new investors as opposed to experienced investors. This is very similar to the conversations we've been having, but we're niching down to this one specific arena of the person who's never bought a house before. My favorite. They have more financing options. They have more ability to just jump into a property, house hack, do the single family or 3-family owner occupied, live rent free. Have anybody on the call used any of these strategies themselves personally? Excellent. And it helped you out, right? This is something you can speak to and testify that has worked for you as an investor. And so it's easy to sell, especially when you don't have money, especially when their credit is hurting a little bit. They've got $10,000 saved and they're looking at, how do I invest in real estate? Well, anything you say is gold. You're much more trustworthy as an agent. Like, do you remember your first agent? Agents who are investors before they were agents, yes? So remember your first agent, everything they said, they sounded like a genius. Yes? You believed it. You're like, oh my God, like this person is so smart. They're so intelligent. They're sophisticated. They know what they're doing. And now today, as investors, this is putting the agency side aside. As an investor, can you think of your feeling of other agents? How do you feel? I'll give my personal experience from all the hundreds of investors I've worked with across the country. They feel like agents don't know what they're talking about. They're like, agents just know how to show me stuff on MLS. And they kind of get jaded. Have you ever met an investor who you felt might be a little jaded towards investors, towards agents? A sophisticated investor who's like, I don't need an agent. I know what I'm doing. We've heard that statement from somebody. Yeah. First time home buyers are like, I don't know if I need an agent. I don't know if I need an appraisal. I don't know if should I go to the bank? Should I not go to the bank? Should I look at property first? Should I, maybe I should like do tic-tac-toe about which area I should be in. I don't know if my favorite color is going to come up on one of the questionnaires. You let me know, oh agent, of success, agent of real estate, queen or king of this household coin creating asset, you really are important when you're working with a new buyer investor. And you've heard the story. Tony Robbins is acclaimed for telling his story about the elephant. Who here has heard the story about the elephant as a young baby? The giant elephant grows up and becomes really powerful, but as a young baby, in order to control it in the circus, they'll go and put a chain around. Yeah, we've heard the story. So they put the chain around the elephant's leg, pretty heavy duty chain. They drive a big 3-foot stake into the ground, and the elephant wants to move, but it can't. It's pulling against the chain, pulling against the chain. It's, hurting itself. Tiny little baby elephant with a massive thick chain. And as the elephant grows up, it starts to learn that it creates pain whenever it pulls against that chain. And we can think of experiences in our own lives where we've created pain from self-inflicted pain just because we're in a wrong situation. Our parents create a chain around us, or our mindset created a chain around us. Well, in the beginning, you were smaller than your parents. The chains that they had held onto you. And it's the same for new buyer real estate investors. In the beginning, you're their lifeline. You're all that they can hold on to. It makes sense to utilize you for everything. And then if they're not trained appropriately, if every so often somebody forgets to lock up the elephant, in its head, it thinks that sometimes it can pull and actually get away with it. Does that make sense? Well, the same effect happens with new investment buyers. If they're not trained properly coming into the game, they do start to believe they can go to just about any agent and all agents are the same. Whether I work with an agent or I don't work with an agent, it doesn't really matter because I've not had consistency growing up. I've not had consistency coming into this business. And so as a investor friendly agent, you have to constantly be cognizant of the fact that you're growing a new investor from the baby stage. And in the world of animals, I'd say financially, investors are the elephants. Is that fair to say? They walk around, they have the biggest wealth, they can do just about whatever they want, but they tend to leave everybody alone. But if you mess with them, investors, you know what I'm talking about? There's a financial wall behind you that protects you if somebody moves in a direction that you don't like. And so investors have that same mentality. They're very powerful in the world that we live in, but they're also very gentle and for the most part, well-meaning. So if you can raise them the right way, in their infant stages, when they're reading the books, when they're not sure whether they want to invest in Florida or Tampa or Massachusetts or New York or California or Colorado or single family or condos or multifamily, and they haven't figured it all out, but you're giving that guidance, and when they're in an uncomfortable position, they know they can call you or they know they can text you and they know that you have the answer. You're always available. A lot like your parents when you were younger, right? So even today, a lot of you will still call your parents when you're going through something emotional. When times have hit you hard, it's like, you know what? I don't know if they're going to give me the best advice, but instinct says I should just shoot a text or give them a call and see how they're doing. Fair to say? If we liked our parents. If not, well, they messed up like a bad real estate agent. And so that's an example too. So for the most part, we have good relationships with our parents because they put the effort in. They constantly showed that they cared. They constantly were proven as knowledgeable in life. And if nothing else, just a place to have a good conversation with. And so as a real estate investor agent, it's your job to be that person for them in their infancy. Give them the books. There's only a handful of books that an investor really needs in the beginning. We all know what those are. It's the Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. It's books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is probably the opener for anybody getting into real estate. They probably have read it if they're considering real estate investing coming to you. Rich Man and Bad One. I'd say the Foundational 5 are powerful books. Anybody in the mentorship program knows what I'm talking about, the Foundational 5. ABCs of Real Estate Investing is another great one for investors who want to do multifamily, want to learn how to evaluate properties. Landlording on Autopilot by Mike Butler. This is another great one for investors who want to do single family homes. They want to build their portfolio that way. There are tons of resources. And if they've read them all, great. But if they haven't read at least one of those on your list, or even better, if they haven't read all of them, you now look like the authority. Does that make sense? you're giving information. If you can have even glossed over these and you have an idea of what's in those books, you can say, well, this, and they say, I'm having this problem. Well, you might want to read this book. This is essentially what it says, but you may get more information if you read this book. And now you become that resource for them, their mentor, their coach, their confidant, their partner, the person they trust. And I'm hammering this home because new investors really are your lifeline. They're the bloodline for success in your business. The idea for every investor, I talked about it a few weeks ago, is the 5-year plan to retirement. If you can teach them a plan to buy a piece of real estate every year for 5 years, and then slowly incrementally add maybe 2 or 3 deals a year after year 5, this is a easy, simple strategy for them to get wealthy, for them to get rich, because, and that's the path I followed. If you read the book Broke to $250,000 that I wrote, I just followed buy a house a year, and it made me a millionaire after 4 years of doing that. Who here knows that it's simple to buy a house a year? If that's all you focused on doing, you worked your job and you said, I'm just going to make sure that I figure out a way to buy next year's house. It doesn't have to be a crazy house. It doesn't have to be insane financing. It just has to be a house, whatever you can afford, whatever you can scrape together. If it's a 20% down payment, maybe you're going to a different market, or maybe you're in the market you're working on in a different niche. There's a way to do it. We all agree that if we were creative, we could help our clients find a way to buy that multiple house every single year. This next one. If you don't do that, you end up with what a normal agent has, which is revolving 7-year clients. Every 7 years, that client buys a house. Every 7 years, that client buys a house. And like Buffini says, and Tom Ferry says, these clients are no good to you other than for referrals. All they're going to do is send you business. And that's why you build the relationships with them. I found that to be very exhausting. Spending time with my friends saying, hey, can you give me a referral? Like, I'm spending time with the houses that I sold them, and I'm thinking, all they do is keep renovating this house. When are you going to sell it? Let's go. I want to sell this thing. And they're all happy in their locations, but maybe their friend or their cousin decides they want to sell. Now it's one more person I've built a relationship, one more person that I've got to go to parties, and I've always been about fast growth. Who here would like fast growth? Expand the business fast. I was who's watched the 100 Millionaires podcast with Mike Shine? Me and Mike Shine, we do the 100 Millionaires podcast every Wednesday morning. Okay, so this morning, me and Mike were talking about how the investor strategy, he said, I don't think, if he's an attorney, he's a little attorney, he said, I don't think I would need very many investors if I was able to train them the way you are. So if you were to literally just to take a couple of really good, solid people, maybe 10, let's say it's 5, 10 really good, solid people, and you're able to year 1, teach them all to buy one piece of real estate. Say it's something small, $250,000. Year 2, they're going to go after something bigger because they've gotten the taste for blood. They've gotten the money. They've gotten a little bit of experience. Year 2, they all have a friend. Every single one of them has a friend. Let's forget whether the friend refers them or not, right? Let's just assume you stay with investor 1 and you don't even take on the second business. But trust me, you make somebody money, they're going to talk about it all year round, and their friends are going to start wanting to do deals, and you're going to be the person that gets referred. Does that make sense? We agree there's definitely potential for an additional source of income here. Let's just run with transaction person 1. Some will go and buy a second house that year. Some will buy 2. Most will buy a bigger property. Typically, if they buy a 3-family, the next year they're going after a 6. But some will go after a second 3. Does that make sense? Because now they have equity, they have rents, they have proof of experience, and those books you've been giving them, they've been reading. They've been learning about terms called creative finance. They've been learning about subject to existing mortgages, seller financing. They've been learning a lot about private money. And so now they, in their minds, are starting to open up and realize they can do more deals than previous. So maybe year 2, you do, we'll say 12, right? So maybe 2 investors out of the 80-20 rule, right? 2 investors pick up the idea, and the other 8 investors just buy 1 house that year. This is a solid group. All you're doing is hanging out with these 10 people. Do you think it's easy to hang out with 10 people every single month? You can create what we've done, create a mastermind, create a weekly event, create something simple so that everybody's getting together. We're all working together towards moving in the same direction of growing a lot of property. We're not competing, we're just learning from each other, bouncing ideas. Do you think in some sort of soup like that, a soup of collective thought of growth, you'll be able to inspire more purchases in year 3. I think it's unstoppable because in year 3, now you have 2 properties. Some of them have 3 properties. These are leverageable. We've dealt with appreciation. We've had the opportunity to get more out of it. And now you have what I like to call the hybrid BRRRR strategy, where that property they bought 3 years ago, it's time to sell. They've got too much equity in it. And when you sell something, you use a strategy called pyramiding. Pyramiding is when you sell one thing to buy 2. Everybody wants to pyramid because you eventually want to be at the top. That's how all businesses are formed. Boss at the top, pyramid at the bottom. For them, what they're able to do is turn 1 property into 2 properties, 2 properties into 4, 4 properties into 8. And by using existing equity, they can 1031 exchange. I know this is getting a little heavy, and I ask questions if you feel necessary, but they can 1031 exchange and defer the taxes, which means that for every $100,000 that they're making, they're saving $20,000. So any gain they've made, they're saving $20,000, and if you're in California, $25,000 because the tax is a little higher. But they're saving every single purchase that they're rolling forward from year 1. Year 3 is where this business pops off. It really explodes. And so now you've got a sale from every one of them. That's 10 listings, 10 sales, which means they're bringing in more buyers. And guess what? They're also referring you more of their friends. Now, you don't have to take this business. You can pass this out to other people. You can simply deny it. I'm talking about just working with your 10 investors who are friends of yours, who you care about, who you've built relationships over the last 2 years. And now they're selling 10 of their listings. Well, of course, they're buying 2 to replace that. So it's 3 transactions per investor in that year alone. Is this making sense? How this strategy gets pretty crazy. You're talking 30 transactions. 30 transactions in any market is considered good. It's actually considered above average. It's considered very good. This is the bare minimum. This is with just 10 people. We know that at any point, especially in year 2 and 3, referrals and the opportunity from listings to bring more buyers, you can do significantly more transactions. The key is holding your 10 investors tight, building them, caring about them, being empathetic with their needs, encouraging them. If somebody seems to drop off, you replace them, putting people into the community, always having, we'll call it a round table like King Arthur's court. Your round table of your 10 investors, you can do 12 investors, you do 100 investors, you can do 5. It's really up to you. But the idea is you're really building people, right? This whole mission to build 100 millionaires has made me more aware of what I did to get to where I am. And I want to teach exactly what I did so that you can do the same thing. All I did was get a whole bunch of friends who wanted to get rich, and I helped them get rich. Does that make sense? It's very simple. You can't help but cash checks if you're helping other people cash checks. That's what the license is for, right? The license is for you to help people get wealthy. We all sell real estate saying it's the best investment. We may not be financial advisors. That's what I started this conversation by saying. We may not be financial advisors, but in a lot of ways, we're advisors of a sort. And we sell a financial instrument. For me, it's been the biggest wealth creating instrument that I've had experience with. And I've been around. I've touched a lot of different products. And for me, this is the most accessible. When I talk about building millionaires, I'm talking about building 100 millionaires to go build 100 millionaires. I look at what is the most simple form of wealth creation. Because obviously I'm a lazy person. I want to go point A to point B, hit this goal, move on to the next one. Just like most of you. It's like, how do we just do this faster? Give me the bag of cash, right? And I found that real estate, of all the different strategies I've reviewed, is the fastest, simplest way for people to understand. Now, I think that, like I've talked with Melanie before about building businesses, she's already owns businesses. So she is more capable of the fastest growing form of wealth. And business really can just expand much faster than real estate. But when you talk about steady consistency, real estate can't be beat. It's fast appreciation over the long term. It's very huge over the long term. And it's stable when you compare, like Melanie owns Subway, so give Melanie a round of applause. And we run an agency. You know, agents can be fickle. They can come and go, and you're always refilling and teaching and training, and the value goes up and down based on their performance. But in real estate, tenants pretty easy to come by. Landlords, you know what I'm talking about? Tenants are not too hard to find. They're out there, and they're easy to replace. They're easy to put in. The buildings are pretty easy to renovate once you've done it a few times. You got a team, you got a crew who can go in and do it. So you're really building a business for people, because real estate is a business. It's not just a way to play with money. We don't play with money, we invest money. And it's a really simple business for people to understand, as long as they have a good investment agent, somebody who can hold their hand, somebody who can guide them up front. And speaking, one of the first things I learned as a speaker was context. So you'll notice every single event that I ever run, the first 2 minutes are where I set the context. 1, I let you know you're important. 2, I let you know what I'm going to talk about. And then 3, I start running into simple rules. I say, hand to the camera if you know what I'm talking about. Let's mute your mic if I hear any kind of noise. Little things to set context. It's the same when you meet an investor. First step is, look, loyalty is very important. It's very important in this business. If you jump to a bunch of different agents, you're going to get a bunch of different advice, and you may never buy a piece of real estate. Here's the other thing that we find that happens is when you have a consistent agent, you have a confidant, somebody who's your fiduciary, somebody who's in it with you, who has experience. That person's going to care about your property as much as they care about their own property. Second, when it comes to working with an investor agent, because I know what you're thinking as an investor, why don't I just buy all the properties? And as cute as that is, and as exciting and as amazing and rich as I look, I can't afford to buy all the properties that come on the market. I know that sounds crazy because I talk about having all this infinite money, and yes, I can get the money to do just about any deal if it's a good deal, but understand in the beginning, your appetite is bigger than my appetite. As I gain more property, I'm less excited about work and risk and doing things. And so the deals that will look good for you don't look as great for me. Does that make sense? As I get older, richer, and more experienced, I get lazier and lazier and lazier. And I want to do less and less, and I want a higher and higher return. Any investor familiar with that feeling? Where we're all the same, yes. And so for new investors, they're coming in ready to do work and swing the hammer, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm going in now thinking, I wonder if I can get away with not painting the hallways. Can I? We do like to paint the hallways, but it's the thought crosses your mind. Fair to say? What can I get away with not doing? Where can I, not have to call my painter and recorrect this? So it's always going to be in the back of their head. So just solve it right up front and let them know, look, I work for you because I like to buy real estate. I really do. It's my passion is buy new real estate, but I don't like to manage real estate. So that's why I have a property manager in place. And I can't overwhelm them too much, and I can't over leverage myself either. I want to make sure I own enough, I've secured it enough, and I can handle it all. And so in between, I still want to feed the addiction. And that's why I love finding good deals for my clients like you, for young, new hustlers, investors, people want to build wealth, people want to improve their family's financial situation, because I want to build for you what I built for myself. And it's a way of giving back. Who's heard me say that this is a way of giving back? Excellent. You can say the same thing as long as you feel true about it, as long as you feel that you've built something for yourself, even if it's your first house, even if you're looking to buy your first house and you haven't yet figured out the funds yet, you can tell them, look, I haven't figured out all the funds. That's why I'm helping you right now. But I want the practice so that when I do, I've got more experience, more relationships. Who knows, maybe you'll be my lender one day when you're super rich because I've helped you get there, and you'll be lending me money back. And that gets a chuckle from everybody, especially a new investor who's never even considered being that wealthy. Does that make sense? Excellent. Another, and write this down, your investors are not buyers. Never, ever, ever call a buyer a buyer. They're investors. There is nothing more meaningful in the world than giving somebody a title. And there's nothing more meaningful as far as titles in this community as the title of investor, especially if somebody has not earned a property yet. So I remember, I'll never forget this, maybe you can remember your first time when you were called an investor. I was in the basement of my first property, and the agent was on the phone with somebody, and he said, oh, I've got to let you go. I'm here with one of my investors. And in my head, I was like, I looked around. Who else is in the room? Did one of his investors just walk in? And I realized he was talking about me. And I don't know what happens to a human being when they're given a title, but it was like I was on my knees, and the Queen of England was like, I knight thee, investor of Fall River. You have permission to go forth and be fruitful. And I was just, I was like, I had to ask him, I was like, so who's your investors? Or somebody else coming? And he just chuckled. And he looked at me and said, Walter, you're my investor. I was like, I don't own anything, Jim. He said, but you will. I think you're going to own this one. And I remember that confidence that he had in me inspired me. It inspired me to keep going, to keep buying, to keep researching and trying to figure the game out. And even though, he doesn't have to talk to me much, maybe he and I still touch base once a year. I think it was twice this year. But I mentioned him in the book, Jim Baptista and Jimmy, like, once a year. But man, he had such a huge effect on me. I wouldn't be in this business if it wasn't for that nurturing, that, text message here and there, phone call here and there, making sure I was moving forward. He was my agent on my second house, and he was my agent on my third house. And he would have continued to be my agent if I didn't get my real estate license. And then when I got my real estate license, he was my mentor when I worked for Remax. And so if you have your license, agents with licenses, if you'd like to retire in 2 to 3 years from agency like I did, you can build a team. Those 10 people that you've helped build these portfolios, in year 3, they all get their real estate license and they decide that they no longer want to work for whatever job they've been working for. They're ready to put it all on the line and start working for themselves. It's a 50-50 shot that this will happen, but it happens just about every time. Does that make sense? When it happens, they want to work with you. They feel comfortable with you. You've built them. You're their friend. And so keeping that round table just shifts what you're doing, shifts the discussion. Now it's, how do I help them bring more clients in? How do I help them teach other people? How do I help them build their own round tables? But we're still getting back together at our round table. Does that make sense? Excellent. Working with new investors is gold. It's like, do you want the puppy or do you want the 3-year-old dog with all the bad habits? Do you know what I'm talking about? We want Beethoven while he's a puppy, not after he's a 200-pound dog that doesn't care about our rules and opinions. Fair to say? Think of investors the same way. These are one day going to be the giants of your city. You don't know what you're going to build. 10 years from now, some of the people I've trained are bigger than I am. Well, close. Well, some of them are, and some people I've mentored and coached who just had significantly higher income streams than me are bigger than I am today. People I've just had one little conversation with, to this day, they say, you're the reason I have what I have. And you don't know who you're going to affect. Does that make sense? So questions. What questions are there on working with new buyers, new investors, and the conversation we just had? It's a powerful conversation. It's a theory that I've proven, and then when you go out and test it, you'll have proven it as well. So it's a theory that works. Go ahead, Melissa.
So say you have somebody who wants to buy their first multifamily and they aren't committed to like marketing or anything like that. So just look on the MLS and show them properties on the MLS, or
Absolutely.
like shoot them something you find off market if it comes across your desk. But if you're not marketing yourself in that area.
So there's twofold. So as an investor, you always belong marketing in your area. So as an agent, I strongly suggest working with wholesalers, building up wholesalers, teaching them marketing, training them so that you can have a flow of off-market listings. And I also suggest having your buyers invest in marketing, having your numbers be put on the marketing campaigns. If they're not willing to, it's a simple conversation to say, hey, that's okay. On market is very expensive, but there are things that you could buy, especially if you're owner occupying, you're a house hack, and maybe you find a little value add avenue, or maybe the numbers don't have to be so padded. Maybe you're just looking to break even. That's okay. MLS still works. And you can find deals on MLS that you could buy. And with FHA financing, they'll still, maybe not cash flow, but maybe you won't live rent free 100%, but you'll still only have to pay $500 to the rent. Fair to say we've seen those on the market. On market, it's not an amazing deal. It's $50,000, $100,000 more than it would be off market. That's a fair assessment. So you just ask, if you want to buy a house right now and you don't want to spend any money on marketing, then yeah, I can put you on MLS. Absolutely. Perfect. Let's go buy. You don't have to talk about off market deals. If they're willing to overpay, if they're ready to just go, they're not looking for a crazy deal, then get them on MLS, shop them, buy them. There's nothing wrong with it. I 100%, that's how I built most of my career. Most of my investors are MLS buyers, and myself included in the beginning. I used to buy a lot on MLS, and it kind of shifted as I started buying off market. I started letting my investor buddies know. And so I'd say the same to answer that question. Have the conversation, see if you can get them on MLS. If you find they're not moving after 2 weeks, they haven't put an offer in, they say it's too expensive or they're not getting what they want. Now it's time to have the conversation on marketing. Hey, you're gonna have to put $4,000 or $5,000 up on a marketing campaign, but here's the benefit. Unlike most people, I'm going to be on the appointment for you, right? I'm going to be doing the convert. I'm a trained salesperson, negotiating animal. I've been in, sales 101 1,000 times, all of these different books, right? Everybody here has read the books on sales, been in the sales trainings. You consider yourself a conversion beast, right? Like you can negotiate your way out of a paper bag. So they have the benefit of sending you out on those appointments. But Melissa, I would say if somebody's not willing to spend money on marketing, they're probably not a serious buyer right now. If somebody just wants to like go shop on MLS and buy, I would take advantage of that. Take advantage. Those are easy buyers. Run them through. Those are beginning investors that they won't be that lucky on they won't be that easy to work with on year two. Year two, they're going to be asking you how to do off market. But year one is an easy year, right? First time investors typically will buy on MLS. Other agents in here who've worked with investors, that's fair to say. Absolutely. Does that answer the question, Melissa?
Yeah.
Awesome.